I'd now like to welcome Dr. Sandra Krahn from the Manitoba Association of Rights and Liberties to move us quickly and efficiently into our panel on education, which also features Lia Holla, who is the Executive Director of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War. And we have students from a number of different high schools with their intrepid teachers that have traveled with them and worked with them. And we will now have a panel that focuses on education.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Sandra Krahn, and I'm the Executive Director at the Manitoba Association for Rights and Liberties. We hosted the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit in Manitoba in November, and at that time there were 6 schools that presented, and we're going to have 4 more present this morning. MARL is located on, our office is located on Treaty 1 territory, and our work extends from Treaty 1 to 6, and we're also at the birthplace of the Red River Métis Nation. As a Métis educator, I would just want to echo conversations about it's important to know our ancestors and where we've come from, and also where we're going. So I want to thank everyone for being here today. And I'm going to introduce Lia Holla, who is the Executive Director of the International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War in Canada. She studied physics and political science at McGill University, and was also a delegate for the Treaty on the Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. She came to Manitoba and did some teacher training, so we're happy to have her here today.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Sandra, and thank you so much for hosting me here today. It's an honor to be here, and really thank you for your investment in disarmament education, for your investment in youth. That we are the future of not just tomorrow, but today. So it's really, really wonderful to see this investment from civil society as well as parliamentarians. So to start, I'm going to use some of our disarmament education resources. So IPPNW Canada is leading right now disarmament education initiatives across Canada. So I'm going to start by sharing some of the resources to give a brief introduction to nuclear issues, and then get into why disarmament education is crucial and some of the ways that you all can get involved with some of IPPNW Canada's programs. So just over 80 years ago, just under 80 years ago, on July 16th, 1945, the United States detonated the first ever nuclear weapons in the desert of New Mexico. The test site was named Journey de Muerto, the Journey of the Dead, a hauntingly fitting name for what would follow. The explosion marked marked a culmination of years of secret research done by Canada, with critical research conducted in the Montreal laboratories. The heat and the blast from the first detonation was felt for miles, but only 3 weeks later, the U.S. dropped 2 atomic bombs, one over Hiroshima and the other over Nagasaki, unleashing devastation that incinerated cities, instantly killing tens of thousands, condemning generations of people to suffer from radiation exposure. An estimated 140,000 people in Hiroshima passed away, and a further 74,000 in Nagasaki. In the years that followed, many of the survivors would face leukemia, cancer, and other terrible side effects from the radiation. As noted by Suzuko Thurlow, each person that died had a name, each person was loved by somebody, and it's on us to make sure that their names were not in vain. Canada also played a significant role in enabling this humanitarian catastrophe. The Canadian nuclear legacy is a history of violent structure of colonialism. Many of the radioactive materials used for both Hiroshima and Nagasaki were mined from the land of the Dene Nations. The indigenous miners were not informed to the risks of their health when transporting the radioactive ore by hand and exposing themselves to harmful radiation. Many of the members of the community then later died from cancer caused by their exposure to uranium. The village is colloquially called the Village of Widows, and there's a documentary about it I'd very much recommend due to how many deaths were in the region. It's not only Canada's history with uranium mining that's a part of this nuclear colonialism. It's been 80 years of us living under the threat of nuclear radioactive blast from the bomb, but also 80 years of nuclear weapons contaminating land and water, from pulling the materials out of the ground to production to the testing to nuclear waste storage, which is happening ongoing in Canada. Despite all of the suffering from those who have been subjected to nuclear testing, survived nuclear weapons, the folks who have survived have not been silent. They've been far from it. In the bottom of the last slide was Alexandra Whiteduck, who's an Indigenous advocate in Quebec, working on clean water due to nuclear storage. Another documentary I'd recommend. But out of all this suffering, many Indigenous leaders have emerged as crucial advocates for peace and disarmament, drawing from their unique experiences. This is a story of civil society and grassroots movements changing the world. Mothers and women's groups over the past 80 years have taken to the streets and organized. Suzuko Thurlow organized a trip from bringing members from the Dene Nation to Japan to meet survivors of nuclear weapons and go through a process of reconciliation. Nuclear abolition movement has persisted. It's ebbed and flowed, but today it's more alive than ever. In 1985, civil society group IPPNW Canada, the federation of which Canada is a part of, won the Nobel Peace Prize for their efforts in bringing legitimate information and authoritative information on the health consequences of nuclear weapons, indicative of the power of civil society. We went from 70,000 nuclear weapons to 13,000, but the job's not done yet. In 2007, IPPNW launched ICANN and the Treaty to Prohibit Nuclear Weapons. As you all know, the majority of the world is now on board with an abolition of nuclear weapons. We just need Canada to get on board. We live in really dark and scary times. The situation is getting worse, and that's really frightening. But another big part of this is that the disarmament movement is more alive than it's ever been before in Canada. But people across Canada, from Nova Scotia to British Columbia, are demanding change. Students, doctors, teachers, academics, Indigenous leaders, parliamentarians, and everyday citizens. Activists have walked, while stockpiles are rising and investment is increasing. Every second that passes, 4,000 Canadian dollars are spent on nuclear weapons. So every time you sneeze, that happens. But despite all of this, Canadians are coming to the cause. Activists have walked 200 kilometers in protests. Youth have convened summits just like this one to strategize. Academics are producing new research and publication. Grandmothers from Mi'kmaq First Nations to Kabewek to Esquimalt have spoken truth to power. We're also seeing change in Canadian Parliament. On December 10th, a landmark motion passed calling for increased engagement with the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. In addition, cities all across the country have been signing on to the Nuclear Banned Cities Appeal. More than that, the hope for a nuclear abolition lies not only in the works of disarmament activists like everyone in this room, but also in the hands of all of those working towards social justice and sustainability. Whether deliberate or not, all of our work is interconnected. Peace, decolonization, gender equity, environmental protection, the threats we face, war, environmental protection, they're all intertwined. All of these systems and movements are connected by the drive to eliminate existential threats and build systems that prioritize the health of people, the planet, and humanity. But this work can't happen if people don't know what disarmament is. Education is at the core of this work and essential to creating disarmament. Disarmament can't happen if people don't know what disarmament is. Change is not naive, it's inevitable. The question is whether or not we shape it intentionally or allow the status quo to continue. And disarmament education will shape how the world changes. Pushing the disarmament education agenda forward will require youth and civil society to engage in their communities and fill the current gaps lacking in educational institutions. when actualizing disarmament education, we're not only making disarmament more possible, but also building bridges between other groups. You know, education isn't like depositing money in a bank. It's not passing a baton. It's an intergenerational building of a bridge. It allows for an exchange. It brings new people into the conversation. For too long, security spaces have been dominated only by a select few. And at this point, we're able to, by creating tools and making disarmament education systemic, we allow for the future, the world we're in, to be a part of all of us, to be in everyone's hands. So some of IPPNW Canada's initiatives target not only the general public, specific leaders, but also systemic change, target educational institutions. We've been designing lesson plans and workshops alongside teachers' unions across the country, and we invite you, students, to join them. Bring these lesson plans to your schools. Bring them to your community groups. We've been finding places where disarmament intersects with pre-existing curricula and targeting and creating targeted lesson plans as well as nonpartisan tools. These are some of the success rates, but one of the most central parts of this is partnership. So this is an open invitation to all of you. In addition to our work with specifically high school institutions, I'd also invite you to join our general education series every month, the second Wednesday. We had about 60 climate activists last night. Each month is a different theme with a different intersection. As well as to apply for our leadership program, of which you'll notice many folks in this room has taken part of it, including wonderful co-chairs Sarah, Roj, and Avinash, and Clara. So I more than anything invite you to join not only IPPNWC, but to continue this important work in shaping the world we're a part of. Thank you once again so much for putting on this event, and it's been an honor to speak.
The first school that'll that will speak.
Speak a little louder.
Okay. The first school that will be presenting this morning is Niverville Collegiate High School. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eddie.
And I'm Rulin, and we're from Niverville High School, a small town in Manitoba.
So today we will be presenting Artivism, which is using art to spread awareness. Today we will be presenting Artivism, which is about using art to spread awareness.
Art has the unique ability to traverse language barriers, cultures, and communities. It should be this.
The big play button.
Oh, thank you.
There we go. Art has... Oh, where am I going?
Closer to the mic, please.
Apologies, we're having technical issues. Art during times of war has been used to communicate what words cannot. Through art and visual storytelling, we are given the raw, unfiltered perspective of survivors and able to create generational understanding. Yoshimura was just 18 years old at the time when he witnessed the living hell that is the aftermath of the atomic bomb, a mere 2.6 miles from the hypocenter of the blast. His artwork communicates the horror of what he saw and paints a picture that no photograph could ever capture. A direct quote from him is, "Their clothes were ripped to shreds. Their skin was hanging down on the riverbank. I saw figures that seemed to be from another world, ghost-like. Their hair falling over their faces, their clothes ripped to shreds, their skin hanging. A cluster of these injured persons were moving wordlessly towards the outskirts."
The Maruki Gallery is a gallery dedicated to the Hiroshima panels made by siblings Ira and Toshi Maruki, who suffered immense loss from the blast. They lost family, friends, their home, and community. They made a series of paintings 3 years after the blast to showcase the horrors they witnessed and the inhumane suffering people faced. This is the first out of several paintings made by the Maruki siblings. This painting is called Ghosts. It showcases the horrors they saw roaming the streets after the initial blast. They created unhuman-like creatures with blisters on their face and skin melting. I will now read a direct quote from the artist statement. There was no way to distinguish one charred, blistered face from another. Voices became parched and hoarse. Friends would say each other's name, but still not recognize each other.
Art has also been used to recognize and remember what we've lost and to call for change. Through art, we are able to reflect on our past as we move forward to inform our future. On May 5th, 1958, Children's Day in Japan, the Children's Peace Monument was inaugurated through the touching effort of the late Sadako Sasaki's classmates. Sadako was exposed to the nuclear radiation at just 2 years old, and her story is just one of many preventable deaths caused by the long-term effects of nuclear warfare.
We students have a pivotal role to play in this fight for peace. With our art and voices as creative, we can invite people in, spark conversation, and create a general understanding.
After receiving a call to action at the Youth Nuclear Peace Summit this past November, Niverville High School Student Action Group, spearheaded by teacher/artist Tony Clark, has created an art initiative that doubles as a workshop to spark conversation about nuclear peace. Each of the 270 squares of canvas will showcase a unique student's perspective and understanding, and also allow for students to explore their own understanding as they create conversation about nuclear war. This art piece will also feature letters sent to and from Japan before hopefully finding a home in the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. When the Bomb Falls is a children's book that aims to educate parents and children alike on what to do in the events of a nuclear fallout, which is a reality that we are all too close to. This poignant book communicates the all too near reality that we are setting up for our children to live in if we do not push for nuclear disarmament. Moving forward from the summit, I hope you have a newfound understanding and appreciation for art and see how your voices can be used to express what you want to create as advocates. To quote Canadian communication theorist and philosopher Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message. Just like art, activism is derivative. So going forward from the summit, I can't wait to see what you create from the conversations you have here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your book with us as well. So the next school that will be presenting is Lord Selkirk Comprehensive High School.
We are literally a nuclear ticking time bomb. What is stopping people of power from around the world from pushing their buttons that would destroy the entire planet? Are we safe? Is this who we put all our trust into? How much time do we actually have? Are we next? We are high school students from Selkirk, Manitoba, and here is our presentation.
In grade 9, when Russia had just invaded Ukraine, I sat in my room scrolling through videos, watching buildings crumble, and reading the horrible headlines that were being spread all over the internet. I was an anxious kid, as many were in junior high. I was scared, afraid that the world was ending. My peers and I were, and some still are, uneducated about how terrifying a nuclear war would be. Studies from the president have shown that hearing about social issues gives us high anxiety, whether we admit it or not. I am terrified that my future kids will grow up in a world full of war, and no one is doing anything about it. At least that's what it feels like. Why do I have to scroll and see uncensored videos of people my age, even younger, dying from missile injuries? Even reading about the children's hospital getting hit with missiles. How do we cope with this? I wish people would stop hiding the fact that our future is in trouble and the effects of if and when a nuclear war happens. It only scares us more when we are being lied to about how serious it is. We are frustrated. Listen to us, we are scared. We are the future, so act like it.
Water is essential for human survival. We love water, drinking it on a hot day or going to the beach and swimming in it. But the production of nuclear technology has contaminated our water with uranium tillings. We come from a place of privilege where we are lucky enough that we do not have to worry about our water being poisoned. But what about others like us who do have to worry? Serpent River First Nation and the English River First Nation are just some of the many communities who have been left with undrinkable water. Thousands of us denied our right to clean water. On nice days, we enjoy taking our dogs for walks. There's just something about the fresh air on an autumn day. If only we could stop coughing. But we are uneducated children who think nothing of it. We continue to walk, but we start to cough again. This time blood spews from our mouths. Our lungs are not working. It feels like we are suffocating. These are common symptoms of radon poisoning. Radon is a deadly gas released into the air when mining uranium, which is then used to fuel nuclear technology. We could blink or snap our fingers and everything we have known could be gone in an instant. Nuclear technology has the ability to strip us from our homes, our school, our city, our lives. Look at Chernobyl. Thousands of people older and younger than us lost everything and will never get it back. The Chernobyl reactors exploded 39 years ago, yet people still cannot go back to their homes, their lives.
To make advancements in nuclear technology, testing is a must. Nuclear testing has taken place in countries like China, Nigeria, Algeria, Kiribati, the United States, and more. During the 67 tests in the Marshall Islands, children would play in the ash that fell from the sky, burning their eyes and skin. Still, decades later, mothers were giving birth to translucent babies with defects that made survival past infancy almost downright impossible. We are being led by people that are so far gone, they no longer see the difference between humans and test subjects. When a nuclear war breaks out, we are the ones who would suffer the most. We would die faster from blast and burn injuries, and we are not able to protect ourselves as an adult could. And by the slim chances we do survive, what would we be going back to? Dead families, a destroyed world, and a broken future? Why are children's bodies physically holding the scars from the choices that a leader who we don't even get to vote for have made? Why does gaining power and knowledge go hand in hand with killing us?
During this presentation, we shared with you our stories and what could happen if our current world leaders abuse their power. But why do we have to be the ones to do it?
Miigwech. The next presenter is from Maples Met.
Hello, bonjour. My name is Emily Mann. I'm in grade 12 at the Maples Met School, a school in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And a unique part of the school's learning model is that we engage with real-world learning outside of the classroom. As such, I'm presenting part of my senior thesis project to you all today. So let's quickly go over some basics of nuclear weapons. I won't go too into detail because I assume a lot of you already know and have the background. So the key thing to note here is that nuclear weapons often use uranium-235 or plutonium-239 because they are readily able to undergo nuclear fission. So, Little Boy, dropped on Hiroshima, utilized uranium-235 and is equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT detonating, and Fat Man used plutonium-239, making the explosion of 21,000 tons of TNT. Canada is one of the biggest uranium producers, and we played a role in the production of mass devastation to those two Japanese cities. So although many of us are probably familiar with the TPNW, I'd like to provide a bit of context. It was first conceptualized in 2017 with a United Nations General Assembly convention to, quote unquote, negotiate a legally binding instrument to prohibit nuclear weapons, leading to their total elimination. Similarly, we have the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. That was a treaty that was enacted into force in 1970 and extended indefinitely in 1995 with 191 signatories. So think of the treaties in this way. The Non-Proliferation Treaty is like a room temperature non-proliferation treaty, but the TPNW takes a different approach to non-proliferation. It meets the needs of our current environment and political landscape and is unique in the way that it acknowledges gender considerations. Ionizing radium emitted by decaying radium from nuclear weapons penetrates the human body, causing negative health effects. And a safe level of radiation is measured on a middle-aged man of a certain height, a certain weight, and a certain race. Those who conceptualize this fail to consider that female, male, and intersex bodies were not all made the same. This means that the safe radiation level severely underestimates the effects that it would have on people with female bodies and young people, meaning that young women are the most vulnerable to the effects of nuclear weapons because of the use of this reference man. Now, let's go to Canada. We are known as a peacekeeping country. Signing on will uphold our reputation and commitment to being a champion for peacekeeping efforts. Also, to further work towards reconciliation, signing the TPNW is another way to do that. Port Radium is the area of a former uranium and radium mine and has been brought up as a concern with Indigenous workers of the mine being given last priority to safety services. This is the same with many other former uranium mines in Canada. Materials to make the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs came from Treaty 10 territory. Canada has not even made an effort to come to the negotiations of the TPNW. Various MPs represented Canada on their own terms at a United Nations second meeting of states parties to the TPNW after Canada refused to send a delegation to this UN meeting, although other NATO members were there to observe. All right, so this is actually a photo I took at the Wilderness Edge Conference and Retreat Center in October of 2024. And this is actually a conference center that used to be or is on top of a previous nuclear waste testing facility, which is the White Shell Laboratories. They were active from the 1960s to the early 2000s in Pinawa, Manitoba. It was a nuclear research and test facility operated by Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, or AECL. The main objective of the laboratories were to develop a nuclear fuel waste management program and dug deep holes into granite bedrock, with the deepest hole being 420 meters underground. For comparison, that is almost as tall as the CN Tower, which yields at 552 meters. The lab ultimately did not produce any advancements towards nuclear waste disposal. And it was closed in 2003, and by 2004, problems were already arising due to the amount of waste left behind as the largest nuclear cleanup in Canada. The lab has still not been completely decommissioned, and with work expected to be completed in 2027, the land will not recover for at least another 60 years. They are still looking for a willing and informed community available to host another site like this. So signing the TPNW is essential due to the risks that nuclear weapons impose on the hopes of peace and environmental justice. It also sets a precedent for the kind of legislation we want to pass as a country. The fallout from the first nuclear weapons are still affecting the landscapes to this day, and it takes a very long time for Earth to recover from anything done around nuclear energy. As is the same with humans, as health concerns arise from being present for a nuclear explosion or around radiation. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Dr. Krahn, the Manitoba Association of Rights and Liberties, and to the really brilliant presentations that each and every student has made here today. It's scary, it's sobering, and we have to know this.